Well, it's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Yeah, like Jessica said, my name is Mark. I'm the new compliance manager in the northern region here, stepping in for John. Big shoes to fill, but I'm really excited to be taking the role on and you know, to be able to meet all of you, interact with all of you, be part of these meetings. I'm really looking forward to it. So hoping for a great meeting tonight and you know, the start of a lot of great future interactions.
And Mark, can you drop in your email and your phone number in the chat? I know a lot of you use John directly for some of the discussions about things you were seeing in your community. Mark can be that person for you. Any of us, of course, can be that person for you, but Mark sort of being, having a staff more locally to your area can certainly direct any questions and concerns. That is his job as the compliance manager. So I know he's happy to do so. And definitely use him as much as you can. So,
Jessica, since we still have a little time, can we ask Mark a little bit of his background and his working with the department?
Totally.
Sure. Yeah, I've been with the district about 3 years. I'm born and raised here in the Valley. I grew up in Gustine, so about 45 minutes to an hour south of Stockton. My parents are involved in the ag community. So after I went to college at UC Davis, did a little time working in ag with my parents. And then also before the district, I was working with like private companies, kind of helping gas stations with regulatory compliance, and then came over to the district and been loving it here ever since. So yeah, really enjoying being here and you know, the opportunities to work with all of you more.
I love that. Did a little time in Davis. That's what it felt like going to school in Davis, doing time.
Doing time. Stop.
Spend most of my time in Chico because one of those places is funner than the other.
Certainly. Well, maybe just for the sake of time, again, knowing that Debbi knows a lot of us, maybe I'll start with the folks that I definitely know she knows, but maybe not all of you know all of us. I do see a couple of people I'm not sure that have been in many meetings, and then one person I just see your first name on the Zoom call. So go ahead and rename yourself if you feel comfortable also taking off video. But I'm Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here. So really just the kind of implementation branch of AB 617 here at the district. Stephanie, who is, you all get lots of emails from, I'll let her be on the phone. I think she's helping Debbi, but she's on my team. And I will then pass to Scott.
Hi, good afternoon, Scott Wall. I am the California Air Resources AB 617 liaison to the Stockton community. So I'm kind of like more the general liaison and kind of, I guess, running side saddle with me, but running primary on this subcommittee. I will pass it over to Udo.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Udo Foha. I'm in the Community Outreach and Enforcement section at CARB. And as Scott mentioned, I will be the primary CARB contact for this subcommittee, and look forward to working with y'all. I came from the district, so it was good seeing a lot of you guys. Again, yeah, I look forward to working with all of you. Are we doing popcorn? Just pass it on to whoever, or I'll pass it on to, I guess, Matt.
Yeah, sure. Oh, we got more district staff?
I was going to say, I see Debbi's on as well. So maybe we pause.
I made it. I made it. So
you did make it. Debbi, we just started. I kind of gave a high level overview, but I'm happy to pause and if you want to kind of quickly put kind of your twist on what the agenda that we worked on with you. And then we were kind of going through, we had just done a couple of us for intros, and I think maybe we'll finish that as well. So maybe we'll give you a moment to kind of give your vision. We'll go to intros and then we can go to the next step.
sounds good. You want me to go ahead or?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the Regulatory and Enforcement Subcommittee. I enjoy this type of meeting, and it's going to be casual since there are so few of us, but today we're just going to identify some goals and purpose for our subcommittee and what we hope to achieve in general, because it is such a detailed task that we have ahead of us, with so many rules and regulations. So I just want to say welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm excited about this. And I think anybody that loves law or detail will enjoy this. So I'm going to throw it back to Jess.
Awesome. Thank you, Debbie. I think you characterized it well. We're really excited about it too. It's some of the details we don't get a chance to dive into in this regular committee meeting. So with that, I think we were passing to Matt for intros, and then we'll keep popcorning around.
Sure, yeah, Matt Holmes, Little Manila Rising, Environmental Justice Director, he, him pronouns. I'm just excited to support this aspect of the emissions reduction plan. So grateful to have everybody here on, and I will pass it to Sheryl Holtzmeyer with OEHA.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Matt. I'm Sheryl Holtzmeyer. I'm a health program specialist at the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. And I've worked with Susan Hurley at OEHA and Matt Holmes at Little Manila Rising, also All Saints Academy of Stockton on the Stockton Air Pollution Exposure Project, or SAPEP, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you've been to the CSC meetings. And I just am wanting to learn more about the ways the data could be useful to folks in Stockton. So happy to be here. I'll popcorn to, I see Ed Ward.
Thank you. My name's Ed Ward. I'm Risk and Regulatory Manager at Valley Pacific. Debbie's right. It takes a unique individual that wants to read regulation and make sure things are in order, but that's been my career, and I look forward to learning more about the concerns of the community regarding business and their compliance. I guess I got a popcorn. I'll popcorn over to Juan. How's that?
Thank you, Ed, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juan Luis Carranza. I am the Senior Communications Rep here at the Valley Air District, so it is great to connect with all of you and reconnect with some of you. And so pretty much my role here is to support different activities related to the implementation of the AB 617 project. So really good to connect with you all. And I'll pass it on to Taylor.
Thanks, Juan. Taylor Williams. I sit on the CSC as a resident. Great to be here. I'll pass it over to Margot.
Thanks, Taylor. Hi, I'm Margot Prouse. I'm a resident of the CSC district area and chair of our local Sierra Club. And I will pass it to my to Mary Elizabeth.
Hi, Mary Elizabeth, resident, also a member of the Sierra Club and interested in making sure that the regulations that we have are enforced, and to consider some new programs that might help our region at this time. Thank you. SB?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Esperanza Vielma. I go by SB, and I am with the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water, based here in Stockton, and I serve on the steering committee, and I'm also a resident, lifetime resident of Stockton.
You can go to Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Pierce. I'm the manager of the Permit Services Group in the Northern Region Office. So my department and staff handles air permitting, abbreviatory rule application and items like that with regard to stationary sources all throughout the district and in particular within the Stockton community.
I have a question for Nick. Nick, you ride the electric motorcycle to work, don't you? Is that you or your partner?
No, that's actually one of Mark's employees,
Oh, okay.
Michael Hamaguchi.
That's an awesome electric motorcycle. Awesome.
I will definitely tell him you said that.
All right.
And I'll hand it off to Heather.
Because that's why he owns it.
That's probably true. Hi team, Heather Hanks, Outreach and Communications Manager, Program Manager with the Valley Air District. I'm familiar with all of you except Pedro. Hi Pedro. And last but not least,
Pedro's available. Oh, he was gonna.
I think everyone's gone, yes? Was that it? No, Cynthia, did Cynthia go? Yeah.
No, I haven't gone yet. Good afternoon, everybody. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, she, her, hers with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, and I'm Dr. Catherine Grupa White's alternate. So I think you've been seeing me a little bit more often recently. And I think Juan, you haven't gone?
Who hasn't gone?
I'll take the mic. Hi, everyone. My name is Pedro Hernandez. I'm the Deputy Director with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. And for the record, if it means reading policies and regulations to clean up air, I'm totally down for that. So I just want to throw that out there. And I think maybe that rounds us out. If anyone else, feel free to jump in.
I think you're right. And great. Awesome. Well, thank you all. So as Debbi mentioned, in kind of drafting this agenda, we wanted to make sure that as we kind of settle moving forward on these types of meetings, we wanted to understand sort of what the purpose and the goals that this group felt like we should move forward with as we kind of set agendas and we work with the co-lead, Debbi, on moving forward. So Debbi, I don't know if you want to kick off this next item. I do have a little bit of a way that we can take notes on it, so I'm happy to facilitate that piece. But with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you.
With our goals and that specifically and purpose, it's purpose. We identified some early on in some of our breakout meetings that were to ensure that current regulations were being managed correctly, etc. But we have the opportunity to look at some creative ways of expanding those current regulations, such as incentives, replacing equipment, etc., etc. So I'd like to get everybody's input on what they feel is the purpose of this. I mean, some people touched on it when they were going into what they'd like to see done here, or about when they were talking about themselves. But if anybody has any input on purpose of this subcommittee, I would really like to hear that, because I think it's important that we all chime in. So anybody.
And as that's happening, I have a little bit of a note-taking little sticky note thing, so I can bring it up if that makes sense, so everyone can sort of see the notes that we're taking. If you don't mind, sometimes sharing screens mean we don't see faces, so I'll leave it up to you all, unless I hear maybe otherwise. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Okay. kind of what I've done here is based on the document we just we kind of linked to and has been kind of on our community site. I listed sort of the general CARB commitments and the district commitments related to regulatory and enforcement. And then here's kind of a place where we can stick our notes about our purpose, kind of what you thought you would get out of this group, and what is the goal of you being here today, meaning like you're here at this group. I know a lot of people are talking about, I'm happy to dig into and understand more regulations. So what can the district or CARB bring to this group that would help you either better understand or better feel comfortable or have better ideas about moving forward with some of these commitments?
Can I just charge in?
Please, Sheryl.
I am not eager to read legal issues, and I am not detail oriented like some people are here, but I do believe in people, the community knowing. I think we need to know what regulations cover our area, what can make a difference to the air quality that we're experiencing, and as part of the outreach committee, make sure that the community also knows these same basic things that they can participate in. I know the first time I found the reporting for people burning when it's out of season or when it's a no burn day, you know, and it was really simple, straightforward with a really good response. So that's what I just like to know more about what's going on, and how we can share that information and get the word out there. I hope we can make a difference.
I hope you can too. I really do. So that, I think, would be one of the purposes is also to make a difference and to let our community know. Thank you, Margot. Important ideas too. Anyone else?
For those, maybe I can just help prompt, but definitely anyone feel free to jump in. For those that hear Margot, but you are one of the ones that say, you know what, I understand the rules and regulations, or I maybe you work in that space and you're part of that. What do you feel like we collectively as a group, as a district, or as CARB can do to bring some of this forward? Meaning, what information can we bring? Like I said, at the end of the meeting, we do plan to bring an update on regulatory actions that have been taken and enforcement actions that have been taken, but what else can we be doing and bringing to this group? So I see Mary Elizabeth.
Hi, so I feel the purpose here is to make sure that we understand exactly what the regulations ask for, and that we as a group can advocate if we see that the regulations are not attending to the needs of the community, that we can be advocates. And if you could move your sticky note, I'll read the second question, please.
Yep.
Okay, so what is the goal of my being here today? So the goal of my being here today is to support this effort. And I don't mind to read regulations or to pay attention to details. And I think that it's very important for the district to make sure that the regulated community is aware of the requirements, the minimum requirements, and that we can advocate also for enhanced efforts if people can see the value to the community in terms of reduced sick days related to asthma attacks, or, you know, that we can make a connection between regulatory efforts, health-based efforts, as well as economic prosperity.
When you say beyond, when you say enhanced efforts, you mean like advocate for beyond regulation, like for folks? to-
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, because if they see the value of these efforts, then, you know, they'll be more apt to do it. And that's a problem that we have, you know, throughout our country at this time. Thank you.
To get people more involved in air quality.
I see Matt's hand.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of in line with what Mary's saying, that, you know, there's a role that we have to play to support existing air district authorities and practices. So like I'm looking at your enforcement update from Q4, and you know, the number of public complaints seems to matter. I'm assuming that there's a threshold of complaints that triggers regulatory action, just like there's a threshold of odor reporting that would trigger activity. And so, you know, I mean, I think one thing that we could do in this process is streamline and quick start guide that process for our community members. We know we got a whole population out there at Boggs Track living underneath things that maybe they don't even know that they can call in on. And I know you have a digital app and you got a website for all that stuff. So one thing that I would like, one purpose, if to use the words there, would be to scaffold community participation in the air district's regulatory framework. Just kind of make it more accessible so that people are fully using the rights that they have. You know, so yeah, perfect. And then, you know, going a step beyond that, like, you know, we kind of learned that there's only so much that the air district can do. That a lot of what's polluting our community is put there on us by land use authority through county, city, and port planning commissions. And so understanding what is the mix of stationary pollution sources here in Stockton. And so there's a source apportionment document that you guys laid out nicely, and I refer to it often. I bet a lot of people that complain about the air don't look at that when they smell a bad air day, right? They're blaming a homeless encampment for burning garbage, of which there's plenty. But there's also, you know, routine emissions from major sources that are doing quite well emitting those pollutions, as opposed to the people that are barely surviving generating emissions. So I think there's part of the regulatory and enforcement ritual here should be to interrogate the source apportionment document and, you know, prioritize by throughput tons per year. I mean, we got 116,000 tons of NOx or whatever it is in any given year, 161.57 tons of NOx per year. But, you know, one source is responsible for 102 of those tons. And so, you know, I'm told it's the most advanced biomass facility in the country, and I fully believe that. But I think if it's going to be such an outsized actor, something I would like to learn and be able to say to my neighbors and community partners in good faith is that facility has a stellar administrative and compliance history. And so understanding, you know, maybe it's just the top 20 emission sources in the source apportionment document, understanding their administrative history. And even if, you know, even if there are hiccups in that administrative history, I think it would be important for us to know, because we continually get presented with new uses in our community. And I think when those uses conform with other uses that haven't always done their paperwork on time or even disclosed their emissions in the most transparent way, that's the kind of thing that helps us have a little more firepower at the Planning Commission ritual. So understanding administrative histories of major polluters in the study area would be something that I would like to not guess at by looking at stuff. I'd like you to check me so that I'm not running around with misinformation in my mouth.
Jessica, I have an idea too. I was thinking about this, that there are a lot of rules here that maybe we could put them in numerical order, each rule that applies to basically the documents that we were to look at today. And if we put those in numerical order and put a short description of what they're about, just like maybe 1 or 2 sentences, and then and who they would affect, what kind of businesses they would affect, I think that would help us just to refer to that at each of these meetings in the future. If we could, you know, print that out and have that by it, so we don't, you know, probably by the end of all this, we'll know all these by heart. Maybe not, maybe so, but either way, we would have it that way.
I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that was perfect, Deb.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that's something we can do.
Yeah, I also wanted to jump in, kind of tying along the lines of what other folks are saying, maybe a way that, at least for the Stockton community, the permitting process can be a little bit more streamlined. I know you have to be on certain listservs for certain permits, rule amendments and things like that, and maybe streamlining it in a way where it's easier to find. And if you become aware of a facility that's like near you, you don't have to kind of dig through different listservs or sign up for different listservs. Maybe it's something you can be put like on the community page. But yeah, streamlining that process, and along with adding what some folks have said about ways to participate or learning how to file complaints, maybe also engage ways that we can enhance or highlight opportunities to engage in those processes, whether it be like rule amendments, permitting processes, making that a little bit more accessible to folks.
On that too, I don't know if anybody would be interested, maybe a few months down the road when we're a little more knowledgeable about everything, me especially, but there's upcoming events that possibly we could put information tables at.
We do have, you're talking about like community events?
Yeah.
I think we have, and I don't know if Heather jumped on here, we actually will be at many upcoming community events. I'm not sure how many, but kind of throughout the valley, and I think a few in Stockton. We were actually just recently at a couple in Stockton, where certainly the team there is prepared to talk about kind of the types of regulatory work that we do and kind of generally what the district is about, kind of from all aspects. Heather, do you know if we have one upcoming in Stockton?
We do. And that's exactly right, Jess. We do pretty much run the gamut of topics when we're at events. Obviously, we'll focus on AB 617 a little bit, more specifically in the Stockton area. Coming up soon, we're going to Earth Day, I believe on the 23rd. Or maybe it's the 24th. I need to look up my schedule. Give me just a second. It's Stockton's Earth Day event at Liberty Park.
Yeah.
Victory Park on
Victory
Sunday.
Park. I made up a new park. I do that every time, SB.
Okay.
We're going to be next to SB's booth too, hopefully. But yes. And what we're working on in the outreach committee is to create a timeline, Debbi, of not of all events that someone might be at, but of specific places that you could find us or members of the committee, or just outreach engagement opportunities.
Heather, can you remind me during that outreach, some of the notes that we've heard from probably 3 or 4 people already is about people just knowing how to file complaints or even knowing to file complaints. Is that part of our outreach when we're there as well?
Yes, absolutely. We've got a brochure that talks about complaint filing. What we promote the most probably though, is the app and trying to get people to on twofold engage with the app. One, save their locations, understand and kind of interact with air quality on a regular basis. And 2, use it as their go-to. You can snap a photo, you don't have to, or drop in details. So you can report a complaint right through there. You wouldn't even have to go find a computer or a desktop, even though we also have that ability as well. But I do hear, sort of coming from this discussion and even the interest of all of you guys, that maybe like a white sheet or a one-pager, or something a little more vetted, specific to the Stockton area, that probably draws out the rules that you all are dealing with and the sources you are all are dealing with, and sort of a little bit more of a fact sheet to concentrate that information might be helpful.
And I wonder then, I'm just thinking, I know I'm thinking a little ahead because it's more of an action and less of a general goal, but I'm thinking, I know we have an outreach committee that I'm sure would want to be involved, but it maybe feels like this is maybe one of our instances where the regulatory committee maybe takes a first look at something like that. And then we can kind of like vet it through that outreach committee, which I know
exactly. And
process.
That's a great point that you bring up, Jess, because we were actually just talking about that. We have an outreach committee meeting coming up Friday. And just talking about how we efficiently draw in all the information from our other subcommittees. I don't think we have the bandwidth as an outreach committee to go to all the committee meetings, but I do think once you guys arrive at the things that need to be vetted, then you, like, for example, by the end of today's meeting, you all volunteer someone to join us on our meeting on Friday.
Right. Cool. Taylor.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people refer to like community education and CSC education, which I totally want to double down on. Like relative to like process, I heard like across the board, but even specific to like each of these measures, like Heather, kind of what you're referring to is like one-pagers, like use cases for like where this kicks in, like where these regulations kick in and when they don't, who they affect, like knowing, just seeing examples of like use cases of like when these are used, I think would be super helpful, just to like help, like even just help me understand like what we're talking about here. Because again, like I don't work in like the regulatory space very much, but I know it's like very important. So I want to be engaged, but also want to make sure that I can do it intelligently.
And just, I'm asking just for clarification. So when you ask for more information, maybe you're thinking more real world examples, because there is hopefully small write-ups, but maybe it's more like maybe it needs to be organized differently. But there are small write-ups in the few-page handout that Debbi referred to early on, kind of about generally kind of what rules and regulations are for all the different types of sources, as well as not only the CERT commitments, but I think the CARB commitments have sort of links and write-ups, but maybe something a little more digestible and shorter. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I mean, yeah, so I think this is like, that's a good summary of what each of the regulations covers. What I'm referring to is like, let's like an ocean going vessel, like somebody like opens up a report about it, like what initiates the regulation, like actually starting to be enforced, and like running through the entire example of an entire process of what it actually looks like in effect in Stockton from beginning to end. So we can understand like what it's actually covering, which is talked about in the summary, but like the process of how it's regulated is not as much.
Meaning like it's not just the rule itself, but also then how is it enforced? How does it affect people? What's the next step? Got it.
Yeah.
What do we look for? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. You know what it's making me think of, and I was trying to find it quickly on our site. It's a lot like what we call compliance assistance bulletins is really what I'm thinking of, Jess. So our compliance team does just that, and they create pretty much, they try and keep them to one page. It spills over sometimes, but one pagers on different topics. And I pulled up that page real quick.
I can unshare it.
Yeah. But they dig in deep on compliance related topics, specific rules at times, maybe an adjustment that came to a rule. But it sounds like we would do something just like that, Taylor, where you go, hey, this rule, did you know this rule existed? This is what it does. This is what it looks for. These are the people it affects. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Okay.
And I'm even thinking that in future meetings, we could even go over a rule or two per meeting.
I like it.
You know, every meeting.
In this forum, right? This group. Yeah.
In detail. Okay, this rule, today we're going to cover 4201 or 4202 or what, you know, that type of thing.
I think that's awesome. And I think we can certainly now, yeah.
Use the interest of this group to sort of shape what comes out of that, right?
Yeah.
What are you asking? What questions do you have? Yeah.
That, and I think I heard kind of from Matt earlier, and we'll definitely vet it with everyone and vet it with it, but like prioritizing based on what the inventory is telling us. So look, you know, the highest thing, okay, what are the truck regs and the ocean going regs? Okay, then what are the biomass regs? What are kind of prioritize? That's just off the top of my head what I think the order is, but I don't have the inventory completely memorized, but mostly. So awesome.
Did we actually hear from the people who are actually doing the inspections on site and then start and like talk about how like you move from like that person to what they report, who that goes to? Like I would love to see like, the process played out.
We could totally do that, Mark, right? Like there's people, especially they're probably assigned to certain, not being the compliance manager myself, maybe Mark can talk a little bit, but there's like people, their job is sometimes primarily just a certain site or certain types of facilities. Is that true?
Yeah, so we kind of have our inspectors distributed geographically. So we pretty much have an inspector dedicated to the Stockton community area. But then obviously other people can come in and out to assist and, you know, other things. But yeah, we could certainly bring that person in and have them speak.
And then similarly, I'm looking at like Udo and Scott. I'm assuming similarly for CARB, if we're talking about like a specific reg or something, that you can also bring that type of person, if it's not you already, to talk about that as well.
Yeah, we can bring in specific people when it comes to like one reg or the other.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if those folks could also maybe give us like a rundown of what they're kind of looking for in violations, like what they see, smell, things like that, to kind of help inform community residents on what we should be kind of looking out for, smelling, like what certain smells or things like, or sounds, anything like that, that could be related to a potential violation.
That's a good idea. Good idea.
Sorry, I was trying to find unmute. Go ahead, Mary.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, me too. So I want to follow up a little bit on what I heard Matt say, you know, about the land use, you know, and these regulatory issues and how they interface. And I was really excited by, you know, the information that Margot found in the South Coast regarding the warehouse specific indirect rule. And so I would really like to find out how many of our recent projects or DEIRs that have been accepted by lead agencies, you know, chose to use the existing, because it's a voluntary, the existing indirect rule of the district. So I think, you know, application is very important.
The existing rule is not voluntary. So they have to, in one way or the other, comply.
Right. Oh, that's the
rule.
right. Exactly. In one way or another. So I guess that's the, you know, in one way or another. So, you know, who is determining, you know, if that way is being implemented and monitored and what have you. So I would really like to see a couple of projects that have, you know, maybe been constructed, you know, in the last 5 years, you know, since that rule has been here, and, you know, like what has that rule gotten us? If we need to enhance that rule with some of the language that is put forth in other districts.
So you're saying, Mary Elizabeth, that basically you would like to take a look at who is determining what is their mitigating action that they're supposed to take, and what is not their mitigation? Is it money, or is it actual air quality control that they're going to, you know, reduce some type of emission at their facility? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you know, like they're going to do, but you know, whether or not they do them, who knows?
Oh, we definitely, I would say, so you're saying when they commit to it, whether or not we do that. That is certainly part of the district's follow-up, but what I'm hearing is that I think much like most of the theme today is just an example, specifics from the district, and someone maybe more knowledgeable than me on kind of that follow-up, what those, what the compliance requirements are for ISR, which is certainly, there's certainly follow-up. It's not just they promise to do something and then there's no follow-up. So that's definitely something we can bring to the table as well, Mary. So thank you. And then I see Matt and Cynthia.
Yeah, I think Mary Elizabeth was kind of just getting at some of like the things that we don't understand, which is, you know, does it apply to owners and operators, or just owners and then operators hear about it from the owner at some point? You know, when we're talking about warehouses, you know, what are the date thresholding criteria? Because, you know, we've been a logistics center for a long time. So presuming that something didn't exist before March 21st, 2018, you know, doesn't matter to my lungs if we're approving a new source that is subject to that regulation. So I think there's, you know, there's some wiggle room, and I'm glad we have an indirect source rule. I feel like there's some wiggle room that doesn't fully appreciate the non-attainment status of our community, the advanced mortality status. And so, you know, as you could fully expect, we're going to ask for the most rigorous rule and even reinterpretation of it. I know that comes with a host of litigation, which actually doesn't always get us what we want. And I want to, you know, I want to be sensitive to that. But I think this phenomenon is landing on our community like an asteroid, and our land use agencies are unable to evaluate it. You know, that we get a city proposal, a county proposal, and a port proposal, and they all look at the CEQA guidance and say, oh, we're only increasing heavy duty truck traffic by 16%. So we only have to mitigate 16%, but the ports warehouse is over by 18% and the counties is over by, you know, 19%. Those are 3 warehouses in 3 separate jurisdictions, and they're not being cumulatively evaluated for how they impact our community. They're all pointing to a 2018 vehicle miles traveled model. You know, this is, and these are interpretations that I'm coming up with from having to sit in these meetings, cross-eyed and uninformed. So if I'm mischaracterizing that scenario, somebody school me up. But I think suffice to say, our governments and our regulatory agency seem to be unable to stop warehouses from coming to us. And that's, you know, that's stopping them is becoming increasingly popular across our community, since they're not for us. The jobs never show up. They're for other communities, but they idle their goods next to our kids' schools. So it's going to continue to be a hot topic for us. And this committee is going to have to tangle with that issue constructively.
Constructively, no pun intended. I wrote down example of project subject to ISR, how it applies, and kind of all that underlying. I know too, a lot of what Matt just mentioned, and I know he was talking, of course, about all of the different regulatory agencies involved in warehousing type projects. I know that you all know that Scott's been working and diligently on kind of a different piece of that, which is the CEQA piece of these types of efforts. So I know that's something that Scott will continue to update all of us on as that kind of moves forward as well, since that's been something you've all requested. And I know, I just want you to know that Scott is continuing to work on that. So that's part of, I'm assuming, all of it's all intertwined, right? So, all right, Cynthia, go ahead.
Thanks, Jessica. I think I'd also be interested in something similar for other rules, not just like the ISR rule, but other rules as well. Maybe comparing similar facilities, whether it be like 2 biomass facilities, 2 glass melting facilities, things like that, to kind of see how they've met a rule. I know, at least it's my understanding, that there's at least for a handful of rules, some different avenues that can kind of lead to a facility to meet the rule requirements. So kind of interested in like that kind of comparison where we can kind of learn to see why one facility chose a certain avenue or did mitigation a certain way versus another one.
Great idea, Cynthia. I like that.
Man, time flies when there's lots of awesome discussion. I was just looking down and I thought I'm not even kidding, I thought it said 4:15. So it has not been 15 minutes, it has been 51 minutes. I'm sure this is not necessarily comprehensive of everything everyone wants, but I definitely, just looking at this, feel like I think, Debbi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a pretty good path forward that maybe we can connect with you on like the actual implementation and maybe even a little bit of a schedule for kind of upcoming meetings.
It's looking good. It's looking so good. I'm so excited. This just excites me that so many people have input on this and so many good ideas. It's just, and we will get to all of them. We will.
So,
One way or
all right, go ahead. Sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
No, that's okay.
So in looking at this, I'm going to stop sharing because I haven't seen faces in a while. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see not sticky notes. So I would say then, what if we kind of, as we kind of wrap up here, we have a little bit of homework on our end to do for some of this. And just, I'm going to be completely open with you all. We are wrapping up developing a brand new SERP for a community. We just started kicking off. I think we just are now kicking off. This is our 7th subcommittee. We have like our 8th next week or the week after, which is our truck subcommittee. We have a lot of subcommittees for Stockton. So based on kind of the information that we want to pull together, I might suggest that, and this doesn't need to be our frequency, but I might suggest that our next meeting not be until June. So we can have that meeting, have a lot of these materials pulled together. But what we could do is in the meantime, share maybe some drafts of some of the stuff that maybe we want to pull together for the next meeting. And then of course, work closely with Debbi on crafting that. So if there are no objections to at the very least our next meeting being in June, and then we can maybe then discuss based on maybe at that meeting, we come with a little bit of a schedule of kind of some upcoming topics, how we can pull that together, get the right people in the room, the right information, and then go from there. So without any objections, I think that's what we'll work with Debbi to schedule that, our next meeting. I feel like I'm like energized by all of the great questions. I think our wheels are turning over here. I think this is a lot of the information we have. So pulling it together in like an accessible way will definitely be the role of this committee to give us feedback on. Any other thoughts or questions before I might quickly go to Mark to kind of share our Q1 report, which is our most recent enforcement report, if there's no other questions. Cool. All right, Mark.
All right. Okay, I know it's getting a little late here, so I will quickly share a report. Go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so I have prepared here. It's not quite on the website yet, but a little preview for all of you here. This is the first quarter 2022 enforcement update for the Stockton area. So for enforcement activities that were done from January 1st until the end of March. First topic is our anti-idling diesel enforcement. It is a SERP commitment that we do a targeted enforcement effort during each quarter. In this quarter, we did not receive any public complaints regarding idling diesel trucks. And during our enforcement activities, we did not discover any violations of the anti-idling regulation. So for our stationary source inspections, we do have a commitment for any facility which has received an emission violation in the last 3 years. We do an increased inspection frequency. So during this quarter, we did a total of 43 stationary source inspections, 37 initial compliance inspections, 3 follow-up inspections, and 3 dedicated source test observations at facilities. And then During the quarter, we discovered a total of 18 violations within the boundaries of the community. 11 of those violations were emissions related. And then lastly, public complaints. Like Matt said, complaints were low, and they were low in this first quarter. We only received one public complaint within the community. It was regarding residential open burning. Here at the bottom is a way that people can send in complaints. As was mentioned, we do have a mobile app. We have the website, and then also we can take phone calls for any complaints. So that is what I had prepared for the enforcement update. Real quick, are there any questions for me?
I have a question. Can we go back to your shared screen, what you had on there? You said that there were 18 violations found, 11 were emissions related.
Yes.
What type of other violations?
Great question. So it could be, often it's like administrative violations. So like paperwork errors or things not being filed on time, or
that's what I thought.
Failure to complete, I mentioned we did some source test observations. So facilities have schedules they have to comply with in terms of testing. And if they are late on testing, that's a violation. It's an administrative violation because they didn't necessarily fail the test or anything like that. It's just they didn't complete it within the proper time frame. So that's an administrative violation, which they are cited for, but it's not necessarily emissions related.
And they are not fined the first time, or are
they? They are usually, usually they're fined unless, they're almost always fined.
Okay, I think you might be thinking, Debbie, for residents, we have an opportunity, I believe, to relieve, but that is not the same for businesses. They are fined if they're issued a violation.
Just had a quick
Margo,
question.
sorry, it's hard when you're showing your screen, Mark. Go ahead, Margo, and then I think Mary has a question.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Mark, the 11 were emissions related. It seems to me we had a report, at least I saw a report that was extremely, extremely detailed with all kinds of violations. This is from last year, I think. Maybe it was earlier this year. I don't know when it was. And I just, for the purpose of this committee, it would be interesting, I think, for us to see that once in a while, not to go into depth on any of it, but it's just kind of nice to see what exactly is going on. Could you share that next time at our next meeting?
Certainly. I believe, Jessica, that sounds like the annual report, if I'm understanding right. Okay.
Was it annual? Okay.
It was our annual report. So we had this because we thought it was sort of, I think the request, and we're happy to provide both. I think there was a request at some time for like a digestible quick version so someone can quickly see what's going on, but obviously maybe a little bit of the underlying data available somewhere for folks to take a look at is something we could do. We can put something like that together, Margo.
Yeah, it was very detailed. It was probably more than most people want to see, but it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, we could certainly do that for the next, be prepared with that for the next meeting.
Thank you.
And then I believe Mary Elizabeth also had a question.
Okay, thank you. So of these 11 emission related violations, just to follow up, on what is the, regulatory history of these 37 compliance inspections that you've done? Are these repeat offenders? How much were they fined? Because we all were fined if these emissions, were above the already very generous limits that the district allows. We all paid the price. What did they pay?
Okay.
Kind of in general, yeah, we can take a look, I think, Mark, at just generally the more details. Maybe it kind of relates to Margo's question of like, who are these folks? Is it 11, but 5 of them are the same facility? Kind of what's that list look like, and what's kind of the remedying or next steps? And then Matt's question is in the chat, Mark. I know it's hard to see when you're sharing your screen, so I'll just read it. He was curious to what the source test observations were. Can you describe just in like 30 seconds what a source test is and why we observe?
Yeah, so source tests could be a variety of categories. So depending on the permit conditions, you know, certain units will be required to basically have like analyzers analyzing them as they're operating, and then those emissions are, you know, fed through a computer screen and analyzed, and basically it's just a way of verifying that it's actually operating at the emission levels it's supposed to. And then also there can be source tests at gasoline stations. They also have annual testing requirements where they have to like actually kind of pressurize the gas,
Right.
the vapor system with nitrogen, and it has to hold pressure for a certain amount of time without leaks. And so those are also source tests that we and observe, or we require them to do. And then we do have inspectors, time permitting, attend source tests to kind of verify that the tests are being conducted according to, you know, the required methods.
Right.
And so sometimes, you know, we do that alongside inspections, and then we'll categorize that as an inspection rather than a source test observation. But some days we go out to a facility apart from an inspection, and then we would categorize it separately as just a source test observation on that day.
Awesome. You guys pull chronology and geography when you collect those samples? Like you say, I was here on a Saturday and I did speciation and found this.
It's not quite that. I mean, we're not doing like speciation. We're it's more like we're just verifying these. We don't do the tests ourselves.
Right.
You know, the facilities have to hire third-party contractors who are all, you know, licensed and certified. But we verify that those contractors are following the proper methodologies when they do their tests.
Awesome. I think what I'm hearing too, related to the earlier awesome suggestion of like taking us, like picking a source and going through step by step from like permitting to the rules, to the enforcement, to the inspection, we'll build in that source test piece if it's applicable, so that like from beginning to implementation, everyone kind of understands what a source goes through to comply with our rules.
I have a question. Is it possible for us to find out what the fine was and how are they determined? Is that, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I to be honest, not being and Mark being new and myself not being a compliance person at all, that's definitely something I'll talk with our team and kind of understand generally like what we do to kind of globally express how, just in general, what facilities are subject to when they aren't in compliance. But it's definitely not, yeah. It's usually pretty big fines they have to, you know, to pay to.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. If it really hurts them, if it makes a difference, you know, if it has some bite, whatever it may be. So
one thing to be aware of too, in terms of timeliness, is, you know, that process can take some time, and so for these quarterly reports, including the fine amount, won't always be possible because, you know, a lot of these cases may not have settled yet, or may not have, you know, it just very, you know, it can be a lengthy process, and so it's not as quick in real time as just getting you the information on, you know, what enforcement actions were taken, because those are still active cases.
I see a couple more questions. I know we have a couple more minutes. I will just add, just right before that, is before any of this happens though, when they're noticed and they are handed a violation, regardless, like they immediately have to remedy and prevent like any further detriment to emissions. So it's certainly like finding that violation obviously has things that take some time, to Mark's point, but the thing that doesn't take time and is remedied immediately as much as possible, unless there's like a mechanical issue, is the like whatever's causing them to be out of compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Jessica.
Awesome. Okay, so really, if we can, in like a couple of minutes, and I'm happy everyone seems to be engaged and be on. I have time, but I'm just conscious of everyone else's time. We'll go to Mary and then Ed, and then maybe wrap up.
I'm sorry, I answered it. I neglected to lower my hand. Lord.
No problem. All right, go ahead, Ed, wrap us up.
I just wanted to make the point that you can go on CARB's website and see what their enforcement fees are for businesses that are non-compliant with their operating permits. I believe in 2021, it was like $17 million worth of fines. And San Joaquin had something in the neighborhood of $7 or $9 million in fines, and those can all be itemized. You can find them by looking on the website. So it is, from a business standpoint, it's incredibly onerous if you're not playing by the rules.
Thank you, Ed. And yeah, definitely. We'll make sure to grab kind of all the applicable links and information based on all the great notes. Not only do we take notes today, but we're also recording this meeting so you all know. And yeah, thank you, Mark, for your first meeting on the spot, kind of brand new in your role. We really appreciate you. Thank you to Debbie. Debbie, do you want to wrap us up?
I just want to thank everybody and thank the Air District for all their help, and thank all the participants that spoke up today and had questions and comments. And I hope you're going to be here next time. And we'll come back with all the suggestions that you guys came up with. And we'll come back with some drafts and ask for your input and get some information back to you. So
awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Who knew that a regulatory enforcement meeting could just be such a happy, like, end to our day? I love it. All right. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate
Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. Let's all have fun. See you later.
Bye. Woo woo.
Yeah.
Thank you.